All right, guys, welcome. We're doing the Sunday podcast as usual. So today we have Lee Penman, who is going to join us today. We're going to cover, he's been in the bodybuilding scene for quite some time, and we're going to talk about how bodybuilding has changed, I guess, since, I got into it about the early 90s. So I'll tell you, I can't remember exactly what year it was, but I can remember Dorian had just left, so it's probably, it was before then, because Ronnie Coleman didn't win until 98. So it was before then, and I remember seeing Jay Cutler in the original Muscle Tech ads and the Hammer Strength ads, like when he was just getting big. That's when I started really getting into it. So, and I know it has changed a lot since then. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're also going to talk about, because this is also a topic that I've seen come up a few times in the news, and is transgender athletes competing in like performance sports versus like figure competitions and stuff, physique versus performance, I guess you would say, because I've experienced some of that on both ends, and we're gonna share our opinions on that stuff. So, Lee, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and introduce yourself. Talk about your background and everything. Go ahead.
Hi, well, my name's Lee Penman. My background was originally in the music industry. I was a music journalist in the UK. Then I became involved in the bodybuilding world, just basically because at that time I was working out, and at that time I was also horribly anorexic. I mean, like terribly anorexic. I was anorexic for almost 30 years in total of my life, and I decided I was going to get involved in the bodybuilding world, because then I would be able to learn things from bodybuilders and via doing interviews, because there's always a reason for me doing everything. So my first interviewee was Caitlyn Jenner, who at that time was one of the top bodybuilders in the UK. And I did it under the pretext of having an interview set up with a bodybuilding magazine, which at that time I had no contacts in that industry whatsoever. But that's how I always start, It's like act as if until. And so I spoke to her, and then I sort of got encouraged to go ahead, and because coming from an anorexic background, it was like if you start building muscle, you gain weight, but it's not like fat, So to me, that seemed much more acceptable. It's like I see a lot of people coming from anorexia to bodybuilding. And I think it's because you're literally, they may not want to admit this, but you're literally swapping one form of control for another. Because as you know yourself, what's more controlled than you're checking how many carbs you have, how many grams of protein you have, how many grams of fat you have, So I went from having a calorie diary to having a grams diary, So I just got involved in it that way. And then I started writing for, first of all, Body Power, which was the Arnold Schwarzenegger sanctioned magazine run by Diane and Wag Bennett in the UK. They were two of the main bodybuilding people. And I would compare them to, you have the Weeders over here. We had the Bennetts over there. Okay. And Diane and Wag actually brought Arnold to the UK. I still say to this day, if it wasn't for Diane and Wag, we wouldn't even know who Arnold Schwarzenegger was, because they took him over from Austria, they nurtured him, and they created the bodybuilder and made him who he was, And so I started writing for their magazine, and then I got into all the other, because at that time there weren't a lot of people writing about bodybuilding. It was actually the same time Peter McGough was writing for Muscle & Co. I was with Muscle & Co. with Peter, and Bodybuilding Monthly was out. I was in there too. And then we did a spin-off from Bodybuilding Monthly called Physiques International. I was one of the editors on there. So basically every single bodybuilding magazine in the UK, I had a finger in, you know what I mean? I was writing for. So at times I was probably one of the most prolific bodybuilding writers at that time on the female sport, because I focused on the female sport at that time.
Okay.
So that in a big nutshell is my background.
Okay, and you also did this work for RX Muscle too, correct?
Yes, that was when I came over to the USA. I had like about a few years where I was just working, retail just to pay the bills. I totally was out of the bodybuilding industry altogether. And then I went to see, I think it was 2008 New York Pro. And at that point, I'd been contacting Dave Palumbo a lot. Like, I think he would say hounding. Writing to him all the time, like, I read your column, because at that time he was doing the anabolic, I can't remember what it was called now, the anabolic freak column in muscular development.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, remember those? And I was reading them all, and I contacted them, you know, with resume. Saying, I'm this writer. I used to write for all the magazines in the UK. You know, I haven't done it for a while, but I'm anxious to get back into it. So he said, well, we're going to be at the New York Pro this weekend, so meet me there. So I went to the New York Pro 2008, met him then. At that time, his then fiancée, Colette, was competing. And he met me at the intermission, and he said, you know, my fiance is working with me on Species Nutrition. We're just starting this nutrition company, and we're doing a newsletter. Would you like to get involved in that? You know, so I said, sure, you know. So then I started working with Colette on the newsletter. And then, of course, when when the proverbial shit hit the fan at Muscular Development, and that all went down, it was Dave decided he was going to start his own website. And that was what was to become RX Muscle. So I still remember one day in his home in Long Island, myself, Dave, John Romano, and Colette all sat in a room deciding what RX Muscle was going to be, you know? And so that was my start in RX. And I wrote for them for several years.
That's awesome, man. Who won the New York Pro 2008? Was that when Senapani won, or was that? Do you remember?
Was that, sorry?
Do you remember
that one?
Yeah, who won that one?
I have no idea. I'm sorry.
I
am the worst at shows. I am absolutely the worst at shows. I mean, I do remember it was the first time I'd met Bev Francis since I took her on a tour of Scotland back in the 80s. And I remember the coolest thing is I went up to her at the entry and I said, you don't remember me, do you? And she goes, yes. And, you know, and at that time, she knew me. My name was Karen. And she went, and I went, wow, you know, you remember. She goes, how could I forget?
That was,
so I instantly kind of felt back at home again, you know. I felt accepted again, you know. And then like I said, it spun off then, and I was doing regular stuff with RX. I was the staff writer, editor for the RX for, I don't know how long, maybe 6 years or something like that.
I remember, as far as the Species line, like, I'm a huge fan. All the clients that I train, we take all that stuff, because I was, when he first did the videos where he was in a gym doing like some small seminars talking about when he first started the company, I really liked his idea behind him. Like, I never thought fiber was such a big deal until I took his Fiberlize, and now I don't care. I will always have that. It's a staple. It makes just everything great. And, you know, his supplement line is one of my preferred. All my clients, that's what I recommend first, is a Species line. But anyway, when you mentioned the old Muscular Development, man, I used to, and this goes into what I was going to ask you about, the differences, how bodybuilding's changed, because Muscular Development, when I got into bodybuilding, I would read those cover to cover all the time, because the internet really didn't have a lot of stuff on it. It was just coming out, and I used to be a machinist, and there's sometimes we're cutting tool steel and we're not doing shit forever, just waiting for it to feed across. So I'd sit there and just read all these articles, and I can still to this day remember some of the crazy ass lines that Lee Priest would say in his articles, like just hilarious stuff. But I liked him because he always had really good points on stuff. But he had no filter at all, and I can remember I can remember verbatim the stuff he would say. But you know, I really hate that magazine kind of went to shit, because back in the mid-late 90s and stuff, like, you could learn so much reading this, because it was more into, it wasn't like Flex where it was like, hey, cycle your carbs, you'll lose some weight. Like, they got into the...
Well, it was the real thing. Yeah, they didn't, you know, they covered everything, even things that nobody wanted to talk about, you know?
Yeah.
Like steroids, you know what I mean? They had whole articles on them, you know?
And they had the lawyers and the doctors and people from the educated backgrounds to put all the information in, and it was an awesome. And they had all the.
Remember how thick it used to be? It used to be like a phone book.
Yeah, it was. It was like 300 and some pages every.
I know.
It was.
I mean, you needed to be muscular to pick it off the shelf.
Yeah, that was. That used to be awesome. Now, the reason I'd say that is because now there's so much, especially with the forums. I know people have said this before, but there is so much shit being put out. Like, somebody loses 10 pounds and all of a sudden they market themselves as this god of bodybuilding. and they'll go in the forums, and even the ones that are talking about, you know, drug cycles and stuff, people put some stupid shit in there. And there's, you know, people will go on and like certain websites that are free and have all these information that have ridiculous, very generic stuff. And, you know, while I was talking earlier, like a week or two ago about this, when I first started, when I was in the gym, there was always a group of guys or one or two guys that really knew their shit, or the gym owner would be like a former, you know, NPC bodybuilder that just couldn't turn pro but knew his stuff. He just couldn't catch a break or something like that. And those guys, if they liked you, they take you under their wing and you would learn a lot of stuff. Like I learned a lot because, you know, I started training with a friend of my father's that was very knowledgeable, and he showed me stuff that I still do to this day. But now it's like everybody and their fucking brother is an expert. And you go in there and you hear them talking to people and you're like, dude, do you know what the hell you're saying right now? And because now it's not facts on the internet anymore, it's opinions.
Yeah.
So you take what you can, and these guys will regurgitate it because somebody, I always say, like, don't look at the guy that came in with the badass genetics, because they're probably the ones that are going to tell you the regurgitated information. Look at somebody that started looking like shit and they just slowly progressed. Over time and start looking better, because they're the ones that are going through trial and error and going through hurdles and doing their research, and they're learning their stuff. Yeah.
No, too many people are, it's like you said, they do a show, their first show, they maybe place well in the first show. Next minute, you know, they come back and they've got their own clients. I'm like, what? I mean, you know, we got that a lot when we used to do spray tanning. Colette Nelson and myself used to do spray tanning. And one time we'd be tanning somebody for the first show. Next time they'd be bringing their clients in. It's just like, you know what? You've done one show, you know? It's like where our other people who, I started a Facebook page specifically to help transgender individuals. And I gathered all the people that I knew in the bodybuilding world, which, as you can gather, would be significant at this stage, you know?
Yeah.
And I'd the likes of, you know, Brian Pazdish, I'd Colette Nelson, I'd Debbie Bramwell, I'd Abbas Katami, I'd Susan Lombardo. I mean, you name them, you know, Melody Specco. I had a whole load of people involved in that were there ready to answer questions for people. Nobody, the participation was so low, I just disbanded the whole thing. Because the trouble is, everybody thinks they know. You know, everybody thinks, oh no, it's okay, I read Muscle and Fitness. I know, you know, I know what to do. I don't need to ask this person, you know. So I kind of got like antagonistic about the whole thing, because I thought, you know, I set this up for you. You're not using it, so, you know, I'm just going to click, remove.
When was that?
Well, on the head.
Oh. When was that? When did you have that group set up?
That was I was about maybe 2 years ago on Facebook. Transgender Fitness, I think it was.
I want to say I've heard of it. I do, because somebody that I had trained once, I think she was in there.
Actually, yeah, it was Tepa.
Tepa, yeah.
That was her. Sorry, wrong pronunciation. Yeah, she was in there. Yeah.
She would. She told me about it because we were actually living together at the time. Because I don't know if you've watched some of my other videos, but I dated her for about 2 years.
Yeah.
And because of my lifestyle, she got hooked on it. She went to the gym and she started seeing results, and she got hooked and she wanted to compete. And she would go to that room to learn some reference points and stuff, because we were still kind of iffy on how to manage, because this is before everybody started taking the estradiol pills. They're still doing the shots, and the side effects are just ridiculous. You know, if you take
sure.
And we were trying to figure out ways around that, because she could take a shot and it would look like she was on a period for like 2 weeks, like blown up, because it's Valerate. It's a really slow ester, so once they get those side effects, they stay there for fucking ever.
Yeah,
it was a pain in the ass, and that was probably the biggest hurdle. And I think what we did was, because either lower the dose or something to where she still could get something out of it, but because she was, after a while, she was like, "Fuck it, whatever I got to do. I don't want to look like shit on stage." So we took it out temporarily, and everything started working. And then afterwards, she slowly got back on. Was okay.
Yeah. No, because when you're doing female competitors, the thing you want to get rid of is as much estrogen as you can before a show. And if you're talking about transgender female, then she's taking estrogen. So it has to be hard, for them to get in shape.
And that was one of my arguments with with her competing in there is if anybody was going to pull the hormone card and be like, well, you know, that's a guy's body or whatever. Like, listen, you girls are taking shit that probably equivalent, if not surpasses what a fucking regular cisgender male natural is on right now. So I don't want to hear that shit. You know?
No, that's what people don't. And you know, when I sent you that thing that I did on RX Muscle, the fitness view, we touched on that too, because it's like, to me, I mean, it's like, it's going to be controversial, yes, but, you know, I've given up caring. You have a female bodybuilder, female physique athlete, sometimes even a female bikini competitor. They're taking shit, you know, and every steroid is a derivative of a male hormone, you know, pretty much, you know, unless you're taking fat burners or whatever, you know, and then you have like say a male to female transgender athlete wishing to compete alongside them, and they're all up in arms, but it's like, this person is taking everything possible to suppress their male hormones, and you're taking everything possible to enhance your male hormones.
Yeah, exactly.
So isn't this equal? Isn't there an equal line here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At some point, does this person really have an advantage over you, who are taking all these anti-estrogens and everything? You know what I mean? That's where I have a problem with it, you know? I mean, I can't see that as a valid argument if they really look into the science of transgender hormone therapy, you know, and look at what they're doing. And it's like, is it because it rattles? I really don't know if it rattles them in some way. It challenges their own gender, you know, you know, like, how dare they, you know? I really don't know what it is, but I see nothing wrong with, it's particularly on the female side, that, you know, competing against other females. I don't see because it's not like she's going to go in there like as if you put on a bikini just now and shaved off your beard. You know what I mean? It's not like she's going to go in there looking like a guy, you know? And yet some women up there looking like guys, you know? It's like...
And if anything, when it comes to the performance for the physique part, like, they're at a structural disadvantage anyway. And I've even seen female to male compete in men's physique a few years ago.
Yeah.
And you know, it's if anything, it's harder for her because it's not just about, like, you have to match a certain shape that is more favorable of a female body. And these transgender females, they have structural flaws, like in the hips and stuff. So you have to take, well, we're taking that into consideration, like for her glutes and then her outer quads and shoulders, to try to give her more of an hourglass or V-taper type so that she could blend in with them, you know, so as far as body-wise, so those flaws wouldn't show. And I think we did a really good job. I mean, when she walked out on stage, I mean, she owned it. I mean, but it's the stage presence, you know, with people realize a lot of the gay and transgender community, you know, when it comes to performing and drag and whatever, you know, their stage presence is like, you can't top that. So, and when she walked out there, it was like, you knew she stole the show.
Yeah.
So that's one advantage that she did have. But if people wanted to fuss about her competing, like, look, she's a structural disadvantage. And she's and you can't fuss about the hormones, because God knows even these bikini athletes take ridiculous amounts of
I know. It's so ridiculous. There's the supposed to be the epitome of femininity up there, taking, you know what I mean, what, you know, Providon or whatever to look harder on stage. You know what I mean? It's, but I mean, it's always going to be like that, though. There's always going to be some. But I think, honestly, if I was a male to female transgender wishing to compete, I think I'd just keep my mouth shut and go ahead and do it. Yeah. Because nobody's going to know. Most people have their passports and all their ID all changed anyway. So it's nobody's business. It's nobody's business.
And if anything,
unless you're going to sleep with the person, it's nobody's business. And I'm assuming she's not intending sleeping with all the judges to win. So therefore, it's nobody's business, you know? Yeah. Nobody, you know, I really think that, because then that's when you have a stigma. Because then you make it something. If you just, it's like someone in the transgender community, it's like making a big deal of being transgender. You're drawing attention to it. Whereas if you just blend in, you know, there's no, you know, I think it's, so she just gets up there on stage and blends in, or the opposite with the guy, just gets up there and blends in. nobody really needs to know unless they want to make a statement, and that's the difference, you know. Some people would want to do it to make a statement, you know.
Yes.
And I personally don't see the need in doing that, but I don't argue with people who do, you know. Because everybody's different, you know.
I would rather see a transgender female compete and place high and win, and then people find out, almost like dropping the mic and walking off stage. Like,
yeah.
if I would have told you guys before, because I mean, she's very popular. I mean, it's a small community on island anyway, but so a lot of people knew who she was, and it shouldn't be hard for her to hide it. And I don't know. I don't know how the judges saw it. I personally, even though I get along with the judges, I don't know them very close, but I know who they are, and I've never had any issues with them. I actually think the judging's a lot more fair on this island than it used to be. These past few years have been pretty good. Mm-hmm. That being said, I do think she should have placed one spot higher. I think she looked good enough to get second. And I'm not the first one. I did not say that until I heard someone else. I'm like, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. And then I heard everybody else saying it. I was like, okay, well, I'm not the only one that thinks like this. The girl that won was being trained by Dennis James, and she looked phenomenal. A Tongan lady, I think, and she did really well. She looked great. But I think Tepa definitely should have gotten second place in that contest.
Yeah, yeah.
But I was always – that was like, okay, if we wouldn't have said shit and nobody would have known, what is different? Yeah,
no, that's the problem, really. When you go ahead and say something, people automatically start looking at you differently, you know? If you say something before, you're going to come up for more scrutiny. Whether it's just the curious Joes, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you know, see a bulge in the pants or something, you know what I mean? It's just, but you know what people are like, you know? I mean, it's just like you scrutinize more. I mean, I might do it myself, you know? I might like, oh, right, you can, because everybody wants to see if they can tell, you know what I mean? And it's like, it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be a circus, you know? So just say nothing, you know? And then, like I said, if you want to announce it afterwards, you know, then go ahead. But to do it, you don't need all that extra attention. If you're, you know yourself, if you're competing, you've got enough going on. You don't need all the extra validating yourself to people that really don't matter, you know? Just get up there and do it, you know?
There was, what was I going to say? Oh, and I'm guilty of it too, because I've been on both sides. Like, you know, I've been on, I don't want to say the bigotry side, but where I didn't look too positively on it, just because I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't really know much about it until I moved to this island. And then, you know, so I kind of, I don't know if I was curious or what, but I was just kind of, you know, where I'm from is very taboo. So, of course, we're going to be kind of against it. And, you know, you can't help who you get feelings for. And, you know, that changed everything. So after that relationship was said and done, the way I thought about not just the LGBT community, but all types of political and everything just opened up, because I approach it from a very neutral standpoint. I actually look at the facts of both sides before I make this. I just don't jump on one bandwagon because all my straight white redneck friends are there. You know, so being in that relationship, like it changed a lot of things for me. So I wouldn't take, even though it was kind of rough, I wouldn't take it back for anything. But when people talk, like I also think it's easier for me to relate with those people because I've been on both sides.
Yeah, yeah. And having been on that side, you see from that person's point of view how judgmental some other people can be, you know, for no reason. You know, it's not like, it's not a contagious disease. You're not going to catch it, you know what I mean? It's like, it's like, you know, it's not leprosy, you know? Or it's not just, some people like to think of it as it's just it's something to do just to be controversial, you know?
Yeah.
I'm sure the person would rather be, you know, quote unquote normal, you know what I mean, than be open to being held as an object of controversy, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing. What you find out when I started actually researching the whole transgender issue is well, I learned that it was actually like scientifically backed by like being a brain body mismatch, because you know the brain forms in a trimester early before the body, and that's what happens when you start seeing that, and then you hang around the community and you see the mannerisms and this is the same from female to male too, because I have friends that are female to male, and you're like, you almost forget because you get lost in how they talk and how they act stuff. You're like, no, if this was, there's no way a guy could fake this to this point. This is too authentic. And you start seeing it. Once you research it, you actually start seeing it. And I've had friends that have hung around and been like, dude, I know what you're talking about now. Like, this is an actual thing. So
yeah, it's not a choice. People think it's a choice.
Yeah. It's not
it's like you get up in the morning and you suddenly say, oh, I'm tired of being male, or I'm tired of being female. I think I'm going to, to try living as the opposite sex and see how that goes for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a choice, and it's like, some people, I think, have maybe given it a bad name, and then there was a spell like in recent years where it became almost trendy, because the people like Miley Cyrus calling herself androgynous and flitting between one and the other, and then you have, I still question to this day Caitlyn Jenner, there's something not right there.
The thing about Caitlyn Jenner really pisses me off is when she got that award right after she transitioned, right? And I think the front runner for it was some dude with no limbs that completed all these ridiculous fucking Ironman events. And you're giving it to somebody saying they went through all this controversy and stuff. And, she was Olympic athlete, famous on TV and stuff, and got transitioned, and now she's this fucking hero. Like, why don't you talk to the kids that are getting beat up and stuffed in lockers and shit and being made fun of growing up? And they don't even know what the fuck they are yet because it's not taught to them. So they think something's wrong with them, and they go to explore and they get the shit beat out of them. Like, talk to those fucking people, not the people that have been growing up with all this, all this fame and everything, and then transition, all of a sudden they're a hero.
Yeah, and also all the money and resources to do whatever the fuck she wanted. It's not. I remember there was a huge backlash against that, and because a lot of people in the trans community were very against the background that she came from, and the fact that she had all these resources, and she had the TV show. I can't remember what it was called now. And it was like it was almost like her just sitting in watching these underprivileged people cope, you know what I mean, with transitioning and trying to understand about it. I don't know, there was just something and friends of mine have said the same thing, that there's something inauthentic about it. There's something, I'm not saying that this was a huge publicity stunt just to get attention because Kris Jenner was getting all the attention, and Kim and Kylie, and it wasn't that, but there's just, I don't know, there's just something. The first thing that hit me as odd was the fact that when he was Bruce, he said that when he used to do his motivational talks, he used to wear women's underwear underneath his suit because it made him feel more comfortable. Now, that to me was a red flag. I don't know any transgender individuals who wear their preferred gender's underwear just to feel good about themselves under their everyday clothes,
Because you're still having to hide it.
Fetish. That's a fetish,
Yeah.
That's like, and she used to say that she used to walk in the corridors of the hotel after these speeches dressed as a woman late at night, and because nobody knew she got a kick out of the fact that nobody knew that she was Bruce Jenner. To me, it's just like, it's one step above cross wrestling to me,
Yeah.
And at that stage in his life, he'd lived 60 odd years. I don't know how old he is, but I think 60 odd years as a man. He'd accomplished everything as a man he wanted to accomplish. He could take a risk and go all the way, just live the whole lifestyle, for the rest of his days, which is probably going to be less than 20 years, maybe, He's lived, he's had kids, he's had the whole thing. So now he can just entertain his fetish, I don't know. I mean, I probably get a lot of arguments for that, but everybody's story is different, it's, and I was trying not to bring this up, but
no, it's fine. It's fine.
Matt Kroc, once again, I have problems with that, but that's only because I don't understand his viewpoint, Janae Marie, her viewpoint. But once again, everybody's different, I can't criticize another person's choices, but I can question them, because as a transgender individual, I never felt any of the things that they're going through. It's just a little shady to me. That I think maybe, but in the initial stages of Janae Marie's transition, she did say she did label herself as gender fluid. Which to me is more appropriate than transgender in that instance, because I heard, and I think you were the one that told me as well, that she is competing as a male next year.
I think so.
And at least there was an Instagram post suggesting that, she did put it up, saying that she was going to compete in the male division because she thought it was fair. And I get that, but I also question, how is that even comfortable for you to do that? I don't get it. But like I said, I mean, I can't chastise and point fingers, and because it's not my place. But I can say it's just I don't get that viewpoint, and I'm sure she has a valid viewpoint from where she's coming from. I just don't understand it from my own side of the fence. That's all I can really say and be diplomatic.
First of all, what you said about Caitlyn, about when you said wearing the underwear under the suit, that to me doesn't make sense, because you're just recreating what a transgender person goes through, is hiding themselves. You got a female, female brain, a man's body, so to speak, and that's uncomfortable. And so why are you representing that again? If anything, they would want to dress up as a female on the outside to match how they're feeling. Yeah. That doesn't make sense.
How could that make you feel better? You're wearing a suit with lingerie underneath.
Yeah, it sounds more like a cross-dressing thing to me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Now with Janae, I know that she had made a post recently, and I like her. I've spoken with her on Messenger a couple of times, but I do watch her posts, and she came out as gender fluid, and in her documentary she came out as gender fluid, and then now she's starting to say, well, she thinks she's more going towards trans female. So I was just brainstorming on it because this is a topic that interests me. I like studying about it, and it seemed to me that living so long as Matt, and being a champion powerlifter and bodybuilder and stuff, and then finally being open with being who you are, like, because you've been in both roles, you've been in the male role for so long, and now you're trying to transition to what you feel is correct for you. Like, I think it's just stages of permanently transitioning is what it looks like to me, because it's hard to break old habits. It's hard to leave things behind. Like, it took me forever before I finally packed up and left home and finally changed my life. Some people, just because they've been in it for so long, people don't like change, and people don't like coming out of their comfort zone. And I think it's just a slow, okay, well, I was a male for so long, now I'm gender fluid, now I'm going towards more dressing like a woman. Maybe I'm transgender female. That's what it – now, I may be wrong, and if she hears this, I'm not – I'm just saying –
if she hears this, I'm dead, so we don't have to worry about it.
I actually would love to sit down and talk with her on it, because I like to be a sponge and learn as much of this shit as possible.
Yeah. Everybody's experience is different, as I was told yesterday when I said I was probably going to bring this up. And it's not for me to criticize another person's experience, but it's okay to question it, coming from a different standpoint, because everybody comes from a different standpoint. And, any other individuals I've talked to about that don't quite get it either, They don't get the fluidity, they don't get the comfort being one and the other. It's like, if you're a transgender male, for instance, because I can come at you with personal experience. I have absolutely no affinity with female things. So I couldn't just, shave off my beard and put on a skirt and go out tonight, you know what I mean? And feel comfortable. I mean, so that's why I don't get the comfort, but I have absolutely no affinity with female things since the age of talking. I had a Batman suit. I had guns. I had cars.
Yeah.
And my mother used to make me wear a dress when I was like 4 or 5 to go out. And I used to wear shorts underneath it, tuck the dress into the shorts, and go up the street and play football with the guys. You know what I mean? I recall it very well because I told them, tell your mom my name is Steve. And their mom lived like 5 houses up from our house. So it's like, they know who you are. But as a child, you don't think this. It's not, oh no, I'm Steve now.
Yeah.
Steve with a frilly shirt on and crimpling shorts.
Now,
maybe I should be criticizing people.
Now, that's her situation definitely is unique, and I would like if she hears this, and I would love to talk with her about it and get more clarity on it, because it's definitely I can put it together and I see what it is, and I think it'd be cool to more validate it hearing it from her. Because I remember.
No, like I said, in no way am I suggesting she's a fraud. I'm just saying I don't.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure how far on the transgender spectrum. I mean, we have an autism spectrum, so we may as well have a transgender spectrum.
I think there is a gender. I even think there's an orientation.
I think there's a spectrum. I think there's an unspoken spectrum where people have a comfort zone. Some people have a comfort zone towards their given gender, and other people have a total abhorrence towards it, and that's why there's so many transgender suicides, because those are the people that have an absolute abhorrence to their given gender, and I think you mentioned in the prelude that you wanted to talk about the difference between what it was like to be transgender in the past versus the present. And I think the difference is that nobody really talked about transgender even 10 years ago. It wasn't like it was something. It's not like it was common, It's like you were growing up and you were more masculine orientated. You were considered a tomboy,
Yes, exactly.
I don't know what the opposite of that was, because that's not my experience. But I don't know what they called a guy growing up that was more into female things. I'm sure it was not, the tomboy is not a derogatory term, so I'm sure they had a non-derogatory term for a guy.
Usually it'd be like metrosexual, like a guy that wanted to be more effeminate, like as far as looking better and stuff, it'd be metrosexual.
Yeah. So, I mean, we had like those were the only labels we had, and we didn't really know. The first time I heard of a transgender person, I think I was about 5, and I caught it on the news broadcast, and they were talking about this man who went to Sweden and had a sex change operation and came back to the UK as a female, and it was in the news and everything. It was the first, out and out transgender, sex, reassignment operation. And I remember the day after, I went next door to my aunt who lived next door to us, and I asked her where you went to get transgender surgeries. Now, bear in mind, I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what that woman was thinking?
Yeah.
This is coming out of the mouth of a 5-year-old. Now, this is the difference. The key point to get back to the difference is, today, if that happened, the aunt or whoever would be familiar with the whole transgender thing and might go to the parents and say, have you noticed anything different about, your child? I think there may be something going on. He or she may be transgender. And then maybe from an early age, like Jazz Jennings, things could be done. Because puberty is the worst time for any transgender person. Because then that's the age where you no longer have control. If you're a woman, if you're a woman, I'm trying to think of it the right way around. If you're a woman, you suddenly go through puberty, you develop breasts, you have periods, you can't hide anymore. As a girl growing up, you can basically, you can go around topless, you can dress, you can dress androgynous and nobody thinks anything. But then it comes to a point where your body's developing, you can't hide anything. And the opposite's true then for the man growing up. All of a sudden he hits puberty, his voice drops, he starts growing facial hair. You can't hide from the obvious. And that's when a lot of people, that's when the suicide rate is the highest, and that's when it would be great if we could, there are people who oppose intervention that young though, I don't know how you could psychologically evaluate somebody to make, because there are going to be people who are maybe just going through a phase. We can't discount that,
Yeah.
Just like, I was just talking to my friend Colette yesterday about it, saying that, how do you differentiate between a normal pubescent phase where a guy, has a crush on a guy, and a woman has a crush on a woman, and it's just a transitional pubescent thing that they grow out of, So how can a parent differentiate between maybe that's just another phase, But it's a very dangerous time to label something a phase if it's really not, That's when I think they need to involve, like, psychiatrists or whatever to assess people, to see if they really are, before they start to interrupt because I personally don't know of any transgender reversals, but I'm sure there have been some attempts, people that have had second thoughts and wanted to go back,
Yeah, that was something
going back. you know?
That was a topic I touched in a video a while back when the whole Mario Lopez shit came out, when he made that comment. And, you know, it's hard because, you know, people that I know that are transgender say it's best to hit it before puberty, like you said. But at the same time, you're like, I know others that have been through puberty and they still say there needs to be an age limit before you start hormonal therapy. Like if I had a son and he was, you know, claiming he was female and he wanted to go like, you know, I want to wear dresses and stuff, and the kid's like 10, and be like, fuck it, go ahead. Like I'm big on process of elimination. Like if you think this is what you are, try it, you know, do it. And if you're like, oh, you know what, that I don't like this. Okay, cool. Well, you know, we're going to figure out what's going on. And if you say, hey, this is it, fine. And now let's say he's like 10 and he comes like getting close to 14, but this has been happening for a few years. I would probably support the hormone therapy early, because not just because of the age, because the kid has been through this for years, instead of all of a sudden like, for puberty you do it, you know. So that's where I would, and you know, that I thank God I've got friends and references to go to talk about this if I ever come into this situation. But me personally, that's how I would initially try to handle it, because I don't want to further have any mental damage to the kid because I'm refusing something that the kid is, that he or she cannot help. And I don't want to lose time growing up with my kids because I'm against what they're trying to do. I don't want to waste parenting time that could further nurture that kid into something really good. But there's this period where they didn't have a father because I was just being an asshole, didn't understand.
Yeah. There was a good TV show on in the UK. I came across it, the Android TV box, you know, when you can watch TV shows from different countries. I used to tune into ITV in the UK from here. And they had a show on called Butterfly with Anna Friel playing the parent. And it was the parent of a boy who was transgender, but it was like the father was so against it. You know, the father was like dead against it, didn't want to have anything to do with it. And she, as the mother, was trying to be understanding. And it was hitting the puberty stage. And there was one scene where the kid actually tried to cut off his penis with a piece of glass in the bath, you know? And that's when she realized it was serious. And she was like, I missed the last episode, so I'll never know what happened in the end. But she ended up taking him to a clinic in the US to get evaluated and treated to help him transition. You know, but his father was like, it was not what he wanted. You know, he was like this, you know, he's a boy. He should be playing football. He should be, you know, doing all the manly things, you know. I'm not going to tolerate this, you know. So, but that was a good series. And maybe it'll come to Netflix at some point, like they all usually do, you know. There's only, I think, 4 parts or something.
I have to look it up because I can probably find it. Because I wrote it down. I want to, before we go back into the athletic issue, I want to, because you mentioned it, I want to just make a point to people that haven't really heard a lot about this, because when I looked it up and I started looking into it, I was shocked at how far back this shit's documented. But when you were 5 and you heard about the reassignment surgery, what year was that, if you don't mind saying?
No, I'm trying to think, 1967. Okay,
the first actual documented I guess attempt or actual, I don't know if it was successful. I guess a successful, it wasn't really like a bottom surgery thing, but it was getting stuff away for hormonal. It was a doctor had a hysterectomy and gonadectomy in 1917. Alan Hart, used to be Lucille Hart and is now Alan Hart. And the thing was, I mean, he had a wife that he met in college too. So this is a female to male.
Yeah.
Who had a married wife, female, and he wasn't like broadcasting to the world. I think his close friends knew, and his wife knew. But, you know, as the community would learn about it, he would move. But this guy made ridiculous leaps in research for tuberculosis. He actually, either he developed or he started developing using x-rays to detect it early so that you could cure it or you could treat it before it got too bad, because he had relatives or some that suffered from it. And so when he became a doctor, that's what he went towards. And he found out that when they can use x-rays, they can find it earlier than waiting for like the physical symptoms to show up. And then and there was a famous actor turned actress, I guess, 1952 that was open, saying, hey, I got a sex change, I'm a female and all this. And They
There was
said,
that one that the movie was about too with Eddie Redmayne. I can't remember what that movie was called. Remember Eddie Redmayne played the, well, I think that was supposed to be one of the first, openly transgender males. I
yeah.
can't remember the name of it now. It was Eddie Redmayne that was in it. The guy that played Stephen Hawkings.
I'll have to look it up because I think
Yeah.
somebody else told, when I was reading this, I remember a movie my friend had told me about that they had watched in school or something about that, about how early like the first sex change went back. And then there was that one in 1952, the male to female surgery. But this stuff goes back to like,
Oh yeah.
they found back to like the 1400s and even in the 1600s when we first colonized here in Virginia before we became our own country. There was an issue with a guy wearing both genders of clothes, and the way they dealt with it was they made him wear men's pants but a women's apron because he wanted, just so people would know that I guess he was technically gender fluid. And
Yeah.
that's how they dealt with it. Now,
We didn't have labels for anything, we didn't have labels for anything, so nobody knew what you were,
yeah, and this is
You just grab the nearest label, oh, I must be gay or something, It's
yeah,
like,
and if you look before we even came here, a lot of the Native American cultures and stuff already had sections off for like third gender and stuff, and it was accepted and it was practiced. And a funny thing, a friend of mine had made a good point that a lot of cultures that were uninfluenced by outside, I guess before quote the white man came, there was it was all accepted and worked into the culture, and then all of a sudden this religion and white people come and all this Christianity comes in, and now all of a sudden it's a fucking abomination of God,
an aberration. Yeah,
and it's like, so it's almost convincing that the fact of bringing in the religion and stuff is all of a sudden what made it bad. But I mean, and I've done videos on this too about interpreting with the Bible with it. I don't think that's true. I don't think that the Bible says it's, if you really look down at how it's interpreted and stuff, you can argue that point. But the point is, they said when the influence of religion and stuff came in, is what turned it from being accepted to being not so accepted.
I remember reading ages ago there was some tribe or something, which may be what you're talking about, where they had these people. I can't remember the ethnicity of it, but where they had these people and they were considered the third gender or third sex or something, and they were celebrated as being special. They were like separated from the rest as being above the rest, because they were two gender people. You know what I mean? They were like they were like a class of their almost like gods to this tribe, because they had their own separate, everything, because they were considered to be more highly evolved,
Oh,
and
wow.
maybe one day, not that I'm saying that one day that transgender people will be more highly evolved, but I've always said I'd like to see a world one day when people are less fixated on their gender, and the limitations of their gender, It's like, oh, I'm a man, for instance, I have to be with a woman, and if I have any feelings towards my male friends, then I have to forget about that. Or opposite, I'm a woman, and and it's what is wrong with, I mean, in my world, it's like gender is irrelevant. You know what I mean? It's like, if you have feelings for somebody that happens to be the same gender as you, then why should that be something that you should prevent yourself from experiencing? Why is it such a taboo? It doesn't necessarily mean you're gay. It just means that on this occasion, you're attracted to somebody that happens to be the same gender as yours. And why is it got to suddenly make you gay? It doesn't necessarily. But then by the same token, I have a problem with all these new things that people are coming up with. It's like we have the normal gay straight, and then we have the bisexual, then we have the transgender, then we have the non-binary, then we have the gender fluid, then we have, I mean, there are so many. I don't even know them all, but there's like an A to Z, It's like, is this really necessary? Gender queer, and it's like,
just call it
not necessary. Does everyone need a label,
Just call it a spectrum. I would say just call it a spectrum. And I mean, just like how you can be female and you could date guys and you can be feminine, but you're a tomboy. You go full and shoot guns. It doesn't mean you're like you're 3/4 female kind of male person. You're a female that does some masculine stuff. Like, and actually one of my friends from home, we talked about this because she was a tomboy, but she is not gay. She's not trans. She knows that. But you're right. We got to think, though, we're also in this everybody gets a trophy world. So every time
everybody gets a label.
If somebody's a half inch over on the spectrum more than the other person, they need their own label so they can go.
I know. We got to create a new category.
And sometimes people are just finding out who they are, and instead of going with it to get a definite title, they just kind of, it's hard how to say, like, I think when people finally like move out and go to college, do all this, they try to find out who they are. They instead of doing that, they kind of start putting labels on where they are in the middle. When it's like, just keep going with what you're feeling until you get settled somewhere, and then worry about, what you are.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I'm like, if it were me, I could give a shit what name or title I have. I mean, I would feel better knowing this is what I like, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to act. I don't care if there's a name for it or not. I'm just glad that I'm just happy and comfortable that I know, and I don't have to worry about that shit anymore.
Yeah, yeah. No, like you said, everybody just wants a label at the end of the day, But then you have the problem, if you give yourself a label, then you have to stay within the boundaries of that label. Exactly. So are you really doing yourself a favor? It's like, oh no, because I'm this, I can't be that. No.
Yeah.
You can be whatever the fuck you want to be, pardon my French.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
19, it's not 1819,
Yeah. There's been times where I've seen some people and I've questioned myself a little bit. So I don't really try to put a label, but I think I told my friend one time, if it was a spectrum, sometimes I feel like Tom Hanks and Big jumping all over the piano, like I'm like going all over the place sometimes. Because I've seen, I could probably count on one hand the guys I've seen that I've actually had a little bit of attraction to, but I wouldn't say I was gay.
Yeah.
This guy just looks really feminine, looks really good, and I am not insecure. I'm comfortable enough with myself to where I can openly say that and not give a shit about it. So that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I don't say I'm gay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, people should be free to, people should be free to be, whatever, they want to be in the moment, really,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the same can be said for monogamy to a certain degree as well. I mean, I have my own views on that. I think, I don't think humans were born to be monogamous, It's like, but that would start another whole argument, you know what I mean? I'm just like a baggage of arguments.
It's funny how sometimes nature and religion really contradict each other.